Okay, so I've wanted to start a podcast for a while now, and honestly, I kept putting it off because I didn't really feel like I had a whole lot to say. Also, I didn't really feel like I was in a place to really, excuse me, to really put any sort of actionable material out there for people. I felt that I hadn't done really a whole lot yet and thought that it would be kind of pointless and just something that it wouldn't be all that great. And so this is my attempt and really just my way of saying forget all that and go for it anyways, because the main reasons that I wanted to start a podcast was so that for posterity's sake I can look back and kind of see where my headspace was, see where I'm at, see what I've done during this period of time in my life. um, and I also really don't like writing, so writing a journal entries and stuff like that is painfully slow, and I usually get distracted, and my thought process usually runs faster than what my hands can do. So it just seemed kind of like a time for me to start a podcast. Secondly, I think back to when I first started my journey several years ago. If I had the ability to listen to or go along with somebody who was doing the same things as me, I would greatly, greatly appreciate that. And it would be really cool for me to kind of bounce ideas off of this figurative person, and kind of see where they're coming from with their thought processes. So, in that vein, I kind of felt like this would be a great way to um, channel that and provide that value for hopefully other people. If not, then it's really just for me, which is great too. Now, obviously, doing a podcast slash video vlog has to deal with a lot of narcissism and thinking that you're going to actually bring value to people. And to be honest, I don't really feel narcissistic. I don't really feel like I am going to be all end all and do the best thing ever on this podcast. That's not really at all what I think. I really just think that my point of view and my experiences and way that I look at things can be valuable for somebody else. They may not, they may be, I don't know. But I'm leaving that for you to decide. If they're valuable for you, cool. If not, great. But at the end of the day, I feel like it is my job to put out information and put out my thoughts, feelings, and perspectives out there for people to grow from, because I think that that's how humanity and society has grown as a whole, is just people sharing ideas and people going and commenting and discussing and getting involved and stuff like that. So that is the point of this podcast. A lot of it is going to be covering things from like just my life. Some things are going to be business related, some things are going to be personal, some things are going to be headspace. I'm sure that at some point I'll probably have guests on here. I'm sure that I might try to involve some of my friends who are also doing super cool, crazy, awesome things. But we're just kind of go with it. I don't really have a specific design for this podcast. I don't even have a frequency with which I will produce content. It's just honestly something for me to go ahead and go put out there, as well as in the vein of me trying to create businesses and stuff like that. This gives me some content and voice to put out there in general. So those are my reasons for starting a podcast. And I guess that would lead me into my first kind of podcast. I'm kind of talking about my history, and kind of go from there. So I have some basic notes that I've taken to kind of like keep me on track a little bit, but nothing overall, just kind of gonna free wing it here. So a bit about myself. I was in the military for 8 years, Army National Guard. Didn't go anywhere, didn't do anything, just did that for 8 years. I joined right out of high school, and I don't regret going into the military. I definitely don't do that. I don't think I would do it again, just because it's not what I'm trying to do with my life. It's not the direction I'm trying to go. I don't have a lot of the same belief systems as a lot of people in the military, and that's probably about all I'm going to say about that. I had recently not recently, I guess, anymore, but last year I stopped going by my first name and started going by my middle name, Richard. So for those who don't know me, my name's Richard. And in that process, a lot of people kind of got confused as to why I did it. A lot of people got kind of just didn't understand in general, thought it was kind of weird, and I get that. I do. I think that it is not necessarily the usual thing, but I think that because of the place that I was in my mental health and the reasons that I did do it, it made sense to me. I'll probably delve further into that in another episode or so. Um, and then I guess I kind of will start back in 2000, I guess it would have been 15 or 16 area. Let's see, 2012. Yeah, we'll go between 2013 and 2016, somewhere in that 3-year period. I was working at Buffalo Wild Wings, and I realized that I was working between 4 and 6 jobs, including military service and stuff like that. I was miserable. I was depressed. And I remember walking into Buffalo Wild Wings one day. I was a line cook. I walked in, and not in a pity sort of way, but I remember thinking, if this was all I had left to offer in life, if this was everything that life was going to be, I'm 100% going to kill myself. And I didn't want to feel that way. I didn't think that that was appropriate. I didn't think that that was how I should feel about my life. It seems that was just kind of the very logical step for me, because I was just like, this isn't fulfilling for me. This isn't something that I want to do with my life. I did looked at it not from a, it wasn't from a, in my opinion, a chemical imbalance. It wasn't because I was just unhappy with, or it was because I was unhappy with what I was doing. It wasn't because there was something like physically wrong with me or anything like that. It was simply because my circumstances and the way that I was living my life was making me severely, severely unhappy, and I needed to change that. And so, obviously, I was very depressed at the time. And so, in order to start changing the things that were making me depressed, I took stock of everything in my life. So at the time, I was going to parties a lot. I was throwing parties a lot. We would very frequently be drinking and partying until 6 or 7 in the morning, and then go to work the next day at like 9 or 10. So it was kind of a very raucous period of time in my life. And so in taking stock of everything, I kind of realized that I was watching the wrong things, listening to the wrong things, hanging out with the wrong kinds of people. Nothing against those people, by the way, either. Those people are phenomenal people. We weren't on the same line. Like, I definitely don't judge people in what they want to do with their lives. If they're super interested in partying or whatever they want to do, if that's what makes them happy, that's great. It just didn't line up with what I was. It didn't line up with who I was. So I needed to just change. So I've started to change slowly. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't a blinking success. Like, it took me 4 or 5 years from that point of my life. So I guess I went in 2014 to 2018. It took me that long to kind of get to a point where I was comfortable enough with who I was trying to be to really make an actionable decision of this. I am a different person, that I no longer could be considered to be the same guy. That's why I changed my name. So, I mean, the steps that I went through was like I started listening to different things. So at the time, I was listening to a lot of somewhat popular songs. I mean, I was just listening to songs and stuff, but I didn't listen to anything that kind of brought value to my life. So I wasn't listening to podcasts or books, or I wasn't reading anything. I was just very stagnant. I wasn't growing or building or anything like that. And so I went through that. And then during the 2017 to 2018 year, I met a friend. We started a company together. Well, he already kind of had a company, but he brought me in and kind of moved it forward a little bit. It's still a thing, but it's not really a thing. I don't know. It's a thing, but it's not as active as it was, which is totally fine. Like, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. We just kind of decided to focus on different things at the time. During that period of time, I became interested slash I discovered or had the thought for the current company that I'm working on, which is my company's name is Dionysus Fountain, but the product that we're doing is Boozy Butler. Um, and there's plenty of things that I'll talk about with that and stuff like that. I'm not really here to plug my own company or anything like that, but I am here to talk about my journey from going to from working at Buffalo Wild Wings and very seriously thinking about what my life would be like and whether or not I would continue my life if that's all I had, to today where I am starting a company really interested in business, really very interested in everything that the world has to offer, and interested in leaving my mark and making it indelible. I listen to a lot of motivational speeches and a lot of podcasts and stuff like that, and a lot of them talk about finding your why. And I don't, for a long time, and still somewhat today, have struggled with the reason why. And I think a lot of the reason originally was I just didn't want to feel the same way that I had been feeling. I didn't want to believe that my life was pointless. I didn't want to believe that I was just a cog in a wheel. I wanted to feel like I was impacting and changing things. And so I chose to do that. Um, but as I've gone and as I've moved forward, I think that my why has also evolved and changed as well, to where like now I kind of think of my why as, I described it recently to a friend, as being the point of the spear, to where I'm super comfortable with dealing with a lot of stress and pain and endurance. My endurance is really high in that regard. My emotional and mental stability and endurance, now that I've worked on it for such a long time, and by such I mean relatively long time, is at a point where I can endure more than some other people. Not everybody, obviously. There's people like David Goggins, whose mental and emotional endurance is just out of the world, like just insane. But by and large, I think that I will be able to move towards that point. And so my thought process of being the tip of the spear is that I can show people a path or a way forward, give them an ability to point to me and say, well, he did it with these circumstances and all these sorts of things like that, so that means I should also be able to do it with these circumstances and my circumstances, and not use your circumstances as an excuse. So I'm going to be super forthcoming with this podcast. I'm going to be super forthcoming with this vlog and talking about just what I believe in, what I see myself believing in, where I am mentally, where I am emotionally, and then also making comments on other decisions and stuff like that. So if you find this, useful or enjoyable or anything like that, I appreciate a comment or discussion point, anything like that, to kind of say, hey, I relate with this, or hey, I don't relate with this, anything like that. I'm trying to provide value basically, and also document my journey and stuff like that. So I guess the next episode I will probably have a bit more of what I'm doing now, or in what I did before now, to get to my point or get to where I am now, and have more of a timeline. Obviously, I understand everything is growth, so I kind of expect this particular episode to be somewhat bad. I'm probably hopefully gonna look back on it in several episodes from now and be like, oh man, that was rough. That was really rough. But hey, you learn it by doing and growing, so this is what this is. So yeah, this is where it starts, and I hope to continue. Thanks for watching / listening.